Today we have a story about a climber who goes to Wyoming, and there he finds he may have discovered something either scientific or paranormal about Bigfoot. That's next.
Just now, deep in the heart of Wyoming, Carl, a solo climber, stumbled upon a chilling mystery linked to Bigfoot's elusive powers. He had set out to conquer 2 giant peaks in a day, but as he navigated a meadow to a mountain pass, he encountered an unnaturally swollen stream with its bridge mysteriously vanished. What dark forces could be stirring in the shadows just beyond where the old bridge once stood? Tune in, let us reveal the terrifying secrets hidden in Wyoming's whispering woods. A trek through the unknown. It's July 2001, and we're following Carl, an experienced outdoorsman who loves climbing. He's climbed many mountains before, but this trip was unlike any other. He was trekking through Wyoming's wilderness when he noticed something unusual, maybe even connected to Bigfoot. With his heart pounding against his chest and his senses on high alert, Carl edged closer to the strange footprints in the soft mud, each step heavier than the last. Carl set himself a big goal: to climb 2 high peaks on the same trip. The 2 peaks stood above a wide meadow and were separated by a narrow mountain pass. His plan was to camp at the base, climb up to the pass, go up the first peak, come back down to the pass, and then tackle the second peak, all in one day. He liked to climb alone because it gave him the freedom to move at his own pace and enjoy the quiet. When he arrived, he parked his car at the trailhead, grabbed his heavy backpack, and started his 4-day solo hike. He followed the path until he reached a large meadow. From there, the trail led to the narrow pass between the 2 peaks. Right at the start of the meadow, he ran into a wide stream. The water was high, swollen from the melting snow. There used to be a bridge over it, but it had been washed away long ago, which he had learned from a guidebook. Carefully, he balanced his way across the stream, hopping from logs to rocks with his heavy backpack weighing him down. It wasn't easy, but he made it through and continued on. He didn't like camping in open spaces, so he found a small, hidden spot next to the trail surrounded by trees. This gave him some cover and a bit of privacy in case anyone else was nearby. He set up his tent, cooked some freeze-dried food he had packed for the trip, and settled in for the night. His plan was simple: wake up early, climb the peaks, and soak in the stunning views. It was a mix of careful planning and a touch of adventure, making it a perfect escape into one of the wildest parts of the country. As the sun began to set, he watched the golden light spread across the mountaintops he planned to climb the next day. He felt a mix of excitement and tiredness. He wanted to stay awake under the stars and enjoy the quiet, but he knew he needed sleep to be ready for tomorrow. Just 2 hours into his rest, he woke up suddenly, feeling an intense fear he couldn't explain. It was as if something inside was telling him he needed to leave right away. His heart was pounding as he quickly sat up, got dressed, and started packing his things as fast as he could. He planned to head out immediately, even though it was still dark. But there was a problem. The stream he had to cross was too dangerous at night, and taking a different path through the open field didn't seem any safer. He felt trapped, his mind racing, not sure what to do. Every instinct was telling him to run, but he didn't know why he was so scared. Accepting that he had no choice, he slid back into his sleeping bag, trying to calm down. As he lay there, the silence of the night broke with a sound that made his heart skip. A set of footsteps coming closer on the trail. The noise grew louder, the crunching of rocks under heavy steps. They stopped right beside his tent, just a few feet away. As the night deepens, strange things draw nearer. Encounters, beyond the stars. He heard another set of footsteps joining the first. Now there were 2 sets, both stopping dangerously close to his tent. He stayed as still as he could, barely breathing, too afraid to move. Despite his fear, he felt a strong urge to look. He had to see what was out there. Slowly, he unzipped his tent and peeked outside. The night was dark, but the stars lit up the sky just enough for him to see 3 tall figures standing near his tent. They were huge, at least 8 feet tall, dark shapes outlined against the starry sky. These weren't normal animals. They stood on 2 legs, and there was something powerful and strange about them. As he looked at them, they seemed just as surprised to see him. It was a moment that felt almost magical. but also deeply frightening. He was no longer just a hiker in the wilderness, he was part of a rare, almost unreal encounter with something he never expected to find. He thought he'd been watching them for a few minutes, but it turned out to be less than 20 seconds. Quietly, the three figures turned and walked up the path, disappearing into the darkness. As they went by, he noticed how big they were and how easily they moved through the night. Soon their footsteps faded, leaving him in complete silence. Shocked, he just sat there trying to understand what had happened. The next morning, he woke up under a bright, clear sky, realizing he had overslept. It was 8:30 and he had planned to wake up at 6:30. Exhausted from what had happened the night before, he wondered if it was all just a dream, if these strange figures had really come up to his tent. But as he thought about it more, the details seemed too vivid and a look at his scattered backpack confirmed his doubts. He was usually careful with his gear, but now his stuff was thrown around and out of place. He remembered trying to pack up quickly and leave, but something held him back. Sitting there, the reality of it all started to hit him. Maybe he had experienced something unusual, but he couldn't explain what it was. Time seemed to slow down as he sat there, feeling more drained than scared. After a while, he finally gathered enough strength to pack up his things and continue his hike. As he walked through the open field towards the mountain pass, he glanced back at the spot where he'd spent the night. The memory of what happened weighed heavily on him. He dropped his pack, sat down, and just took a few deep breaths, overwhelmed by how tired he felt and by the strange event itself. But that wasn't even the worst part. Convinced he had seen Bigfoot, Carl knew he couldn't stay another night out here. The idea of another encounter was too frightening. He needed to get back to the safety of his car and go home. The walk back gave him a lot of time to think. It was hard to believe what he had seen and been through. In his effort to understand, Carl came across something called infrasound, a type of sound that some animals like Bigfoot might use to affect others. He didn't know much about it, but his research showed that infrasound is a sound wave too low for people to hear. Very powerful for someone to feel it. Curious, Carl looked more into what Bigfoot might be capable of, opening up a whole new way of thinking about the natural world and its mysteries. Morning brings light, but the shadows of mystery still remain. The silent whispers of the Wind River. Carl sat there perfectly still, feeling a mix of emotions that were so intense they took him by surprise. He couldn't quite figure out why he was suddenly so scared. Maybe it was because of the low, almost inaudible sounds vibrating around him, or perhaps it was something else entirely. Whatever the reason, the fear seemed to come out of nowhere. There was nothing strange that he could see or hear, yet he found himself wide awake and tense, as if something terrible was about to happen. Later on, Carl's curiosity got the better of him, and he started looking into what might have caused this sudden reaction. To his surprise, he came across some information suggesting that certain low-frequency sounds, those that are so deep we don't even notice them, can stir up powerful emotions like fear or awe in people. According to some studies, these sounds are so subtle that we don't even realize they're affecting us. We might feel a chill run down our spine or a strong sense that something is wrong, even when nothing seems out of place. The more he read, the more Carl became fascinated by this idea. He began to think that maybe creatures like Bigfoot could use these kinds of sounds to influence humans and other animals around them. Of course, he didn't know if this was true, it was just a thought. But the idea was intriguing, and he wanted to learn more. He shared his theory online, hoping that others might have some insights or experiences that could shed more light on this strange phenomenon. To his surprise, this idea sparked a lot of interest. People began to share their own stories and theories, some of which sounded eerily similar to what Carl had experienced. As they talked more, it became clear that there might be more to these unexplained encounters than meets the eye. People discussed how low-frequency sounds could make someone feel sick or dizzy and even cause a sense of being watched, even when there's no one else around. It was an unsettling thought. What if these creatures could actually control the way we feel, using sounds we can't even hear? Carl's own encounter in the Wind River Range of Wyoming had left him feeling more than a little uneasy. He remembered that evening vividly. It was a beautiful sunset, with the last light of day fading over the mountain peaks. As he packed up and prepared to head back, a strange feeling washed over him,
a sense of dread as if something dangerous was hiding just out of sight. He couldn't explain it, but the feeling was so strong that it made him stop in his tracks. But that wasn't the worst part. The fear didn't just go away. Instead, it lingered, making him feel more and more anxious. The shadows seemed darker, and the forest around him felt strangely silent. As the sun set completely, leaving the woods in deep twilight, he couldn't shake the feeling that something, somewhere, was watching him. And yet there was no sign of movement, no sound of footsteps, nothing that should have made him so afraid. The feeling was irrational, yet it gripped him tightly, making his heart race. When Carl finally returned home, the experience stuck with him. He kept turning it over in his mind, wondering what could have caused such an intense reaction. That's when he stumbled upon the research about infrasound. These were low-frequency vibrations that were usually too deep for people to hear, but they could still affect our bodies in strange ways. Some animals, like elephants and whales, use them to communicate over long distances. So could it be that certain creatures, ones we don't fully understand, use these sounds to keep humans away or signal danger? Curiosity pulls Carl deeper as the forest whispers its secrets. Infrasound mysteries in the wild. The idea seemed almost too strange to be true, but the more he thought about it, the more it made sense. After all, if animals we know about can produce infrasound, why couldn't unknown creatures do the same? It would certainly explain the weird feelings people often reported during encounters. The sudden fear, the sense of being surrounded, even though nothing seemed out of the ordinary. As Carl shared his thoughts on forums and discussion groups, people began to share their own experiences. Many described similar feelings of fear and unease, often in places where creatures like Bigfoot or other unknown animals had been sighted. Some people mentioned feeling dizzy or even nauseous for no apparent reason. Others said they'd felt a strange sense of being watched only to turn around and find nothing there. It was as if something was deliberately trying to scare them away. The thought was unsettling, but Carl couldn't help but be curious. Could these creatures actually be using infrasound to manipulate humans? If that were the case, then it would mean these beings were not just mysterious, but intelligent, using their abilities to stay hidden and protect their territory. It was a chilling thought, and Carl found himself caught between fascination and fear. He didn't know if he wanted to learn more or leave the whole idea alone. Carl started reading more about infrasound and its effects on people. He found out that infrasound had been studied for years and even used in some unusual ways. In the past, some cultures used low-frequency sounds and rituals to create feelings of awe and fear. There were even stories about how certain groups used them to scare off enemies or create an atmosphere of terror. More recently, scientists have studied how infrasound can affect the human body, causing feelings of unease, dizziness, or even hallucinations. It was a tool that, if understood and used correctly, could influence people without them ever knowing it. But the real question was, could these creatures be using it deliberately? Could they be generating these sounds on purpose to make people feel scared, confused, or even sick? It was hard to say, but the possibility seemed more likely the more Carl thought about it. After all, if humans could figure out how to use infrasound, why couldn't animals, especially ones that have been avoiding us for centuries? As Carl remembered his experience in the Wind River Range, he realized how perfectly the theory fit. That overwhelming fear, the silence of the forest, the strange vibrations he felt in his chest, maybe they weren't just his imagination after all. Maybe something had been out there, using sound to send him a message. Stay away. The thought was unnerving, but it also made him want to go back to see if he could somehow prove his theory. If he could find evidence that these creatures used infrasound, it would be groundbreaking. But the more he thought about returning to the wilderness, the more conflicted he felt. On one hand, he wanted to go back and try to capture these sounds, maybe even record them. On the other hand, the memory of that fear was still fresh in his mind. He didn't want to experience that again. Didn't want to feel like he was being toyed with by something that he couldn't even see. It was a mix of fear and curiosity, and for now, curiosity was losing. The deeper Carl digs, the more the unknown grips him, Bigfoot and beyond. He kept looking for more information, reading about other people's encounters, hoping to find someone else who had experienced the same thing. What he found were more stories, more accounts of sudden, unexplained fear in the middle of nowhere. It seemed like there was a pattern. People would feel fine one moment and then suddenly, without warning, be gripped by fear. Some said they'd felt dizzy, like the ground was shifting under their feet. Others described a ringing in their ears or a low hum they couldn't quite identify. All these symptoms matched the effects of infrasound. But the scariest part was that none of them had seen anything. They all talked about feeling watched, feeling hunted, yet never saw what was causing it. That made it even more frightening. Whatever it was smart enough to stay hidden, to scare them off without revealing itself. If Carl was right, and these creatures really could control sound to manipulate people, then they were far more than just big animals hiding in the woods. It's a mystery Carl still thinks about, one that keeps pulling him back despite his fear. He wants answers, but he knows that finding them might mean facing that fear all over again. And that's something he's not sure he's ready for just yet. While traversing the woodland paths near a serpentine stream, one becomes enveloped in the serene splendor of the natural world. This tranquil environment serves as an ideal backdrop to reflect upon various tales and experiences related to the elusive entity known as Bigfoot. The narratives collected over years are not merely stories, they are testaments to the enigmatic presence that captivates the imagination of many. For over 2 years, one individual has dedicated themselves to a YouTube channel that delves into the lore surrounding Bigfoot, curating anecdotes from those who claim to have encountered inexplicable phenomena. These accounts often describe eerie nocturnal howls, inexplicably large footprints, and fleeting glimpses of shadowy figures. While the individual has yet to witness Bigfoot firsthand, certain signs such as snapped branches, peculiar markings on trees, and an unsettling sense of being observed suggest a hidden reality in these woods. Each shared experience deepens the mystery. If these beings exist, they might possess capabilities beyond human comprehension, such as using infrasound to instill fear or communicating via a form of telepathy known as mind speak. These possibilities, though hard to believe, add layers to the enigma of Bigfoot. Venturing deeper into the forest, the realization dawns that one is merely a visitor in this untamed habitat. This awareness heightens respect for the environment, prompting more cautious and considerate behavior. However, the essence of this venture extends beyond mere exploration. It is about forging connections. By disseminating the tales of those who have had personal encounters, one contributes to a collective understanding of these mysterious beings. These narratives are not solely for personal consumption, but are shared with a community that seeks to unravel the mystery together. Engaging with this community involves discussing theories, examining evidence, and exchanging discoveries. Each story, each piece of evidence is a fragment of a larger puzzle that the community collectively attempts to solve, aiming to piece together the reality of these elusive creatures lurking in the wilderness. But there's something else. These stories aren't always easy to hear. Some involve fear, confusion, and even danger. Yet this isn't even the scariest part. What do you think? Myth or undiscovered reality? Share your thoughts, hit like, leave a comment, and subscribe for more.